The Autumn Nations Series kicks off this weekend with sides from both hemispheres facing off as we have a Chicago rematch between the All Blacks and Ireland. Welcome back to the Ruck and Roll Show. Well done, the time's nearly here. We've got the Autumn Nations Showdowns. How are you looking forward to the matchups that we've got this weekend? A couple of rematches from last year.
Yeah, like you say, we've got the big one, which you're probably most bothered about, the Ireland-New Zealand one up back in Chicago. Scotland-USA as well, which should be a Scottish whitewash, but you never know how the Americans are developing their game in such a short space of time after the English tour. South Africa-Japan, I think, is going to be a bit of a whitewash for the South Africans after the Aussies only narrowly beat them last weekend as well. And then obviously the big one is England-Australia over at Twickenham. The first real test for England and Steve Borthwick and his side to kind of prove what all the hype's about, I think.
Yeah, no, that's a very fascinating one, especially with the team news that we've got in today for that one. But we'll go run down through what we've got on today on the show. We've got that on Nation Series chat with those 4 fixtures that Dom has mentioned. We've got the URC and the Prem roundup as well, but our eyes are firmly fixed on that on Nation Series this weekend. Dom, we'll start into it, I think, with the Chicago rematch between All Blacks and Ireland. Ireland, the home side in this fixture, choosing to play in Chicago, the scene of their famous victory 9 years ago, 40 points to 29. One of their greatest ever performances, really, beating the All Blacks for the first time. What can we expect from both these sides with 2 years out?
I think obviously New Zealand will be on somewhat of a high after the Rugby Championship. And I think also Ireland will be somewhat deflated, maybe coming into it after not the players who played in the Lions squad weren't all performing to the best of their ability. I don't think. I think most Irish fans would probably admit that. Jameson Gibson Park was probably a similar level, if not not much better than what he was in the Six Nations. And then obviously Caelan Doris coming back into the side. A couple of people are missing out, as we mentioned last week. But I don't think it can be all doom and gloom for Ireland. I don't think it'll be an Irish win just because the New Zealand side have been together through the Rugby Championship and have had that time to gel and get to know each other. New players are coming into the squad and really asserting themselves, like Tupaia in the centres for one. So I think the momentum will definitely be in favour of the Kiwis.
Well, it's an interesting one that you say that, because that's always the crux for these Northern Hemisphere sides when they enter the Autumn Nation Series, because they come in there and they haven't had international games before this. They don't have any warm-ups apart from their club rugby, which just isn't quite the same standard. And then you have those Southern Hemisphere teams on the back of their big tests in the Rugby Championship, and that really does give them a big advantage in the opening stages. I think that's certainly something you've seen last year between these two sides. In Dublin, 23-13 victory for New Zealand on that day. A bit of a surprise victory, in all honesty. I think a lot of people were backing the Irish in that one, but are unable to obviously get the victory. New Zealand just managed that game really well, and it looked like a side that were used to playing international rugby at that stage. The way they managed the game in Ireland were just sort of getting back into the flow of things, and I remember a lot of handling errors, a lot of just unpressurized errors as well, and they allowed the All Blacks into this game. I do think, Dom, the Chicago element to it adds an extra bit of spice into it. I mentioned 9 years ago in 2016, that first victory. Do you think that comes in and maybe gives, I guess, the Irish a bit of a pep up and maybe levels the playing field in this occasion?
I think it definitely gives them a pep up. Whether it levels the playing field, I'm not too sure. I think, there's no hiding the fact that Ireland are a good rugby nation, and what they've built over the last few years with Andy Farrell has been incredible. And the performances that his team have produced and how they like to play, it's very deep, very expansive rugby. And it can definitely cause issues for New Zealand, who like to get physical, get right up in opposition's faces and kill the game that way. So I think, it won't be, like you said, there will be that element of having done it in Chicago previously. But if you also look at the squads, how many players are actually still playing for both nations since that game?
It's a completely different time periods. I mean, we're talking back to back world champions about back in that stage.
Yeah.
Now they haven't won a World Cup since 2015, so
Yeah.
it's a different time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm still leaning towards New Zealand claiming this one just because of the Rugby Championship and having spent all that time together. So yeah, that's my piece with that one.
Well, it's interesting to see how these two sides will play. I mean, if we go into a little bit of detail on it, I mean, the All Blacks, they kept a fairly similar side throughout the whole of the Rugby Championship. You know, they wouldn't bar it at 10 for much of that tournament. And Geordie and Billy Proctor on the centres. There was a couple of alterations to that, but I felt like they kept sort of a regular spine to the team and they sort of built that throughout the championship. Is there any weaker points from New Zealand that you maybe saw against teams like South Africa and in that Argentina game, that Argentina won, that Ireland can go after and you get at this New Zealand team?
I think maybe in the kicking game they could get something out of it because New Zealand weren't the strongest. I think it's safe to say during the Rugby Championship, and maybe in the front row as well. I wasn't convinced by what they had to offer 100% of the time. So I mean, they've still got great players like. So it's very difficult to say exactly where Ireland can get at New Zealand because we haven't seen them play together in so long. But we do know from history that Ireland are very physical in the forwards, so that might be the element where they can kind of nullify New Zealand a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think it's the physicality is always a big thing for Ireland. You know, they've got a lot of big boys in that pack. Andrew Porter, Tag Byrne, all those fellas. You speak about the kicking games. Do you think it is a Jack Crowley 10 shirt for this game, given the form of the two?
Yeah, 100%. I think. Oof. Sam Prendergast, I've spoken so much about him, and I just don't think he's ready for this level of international stage. I think he is a good 10. He can control it very, very well at times, but the inconsistencies, I think, outweigh how consistent he can be. And I think you got, like you say, got to go off form with how Crowley's doing at club level in the URC. So yeah, I think he's displayed that he's back in the running for it and should be given that chance to display it. However, I wouldn't be surprised if Andy Farrell wanted to go with a bit more, you know, what they've had in the past, pick up where they left off almost. But he is definitely somewhat of a weakness in that back line.
It'll be interesting to see how they go. And it's interesting that this game, in a wider sphere of what you're looking at in terms of Ireland, where in 2 years' time we've got a World Cup in Australia, they've got edging players, particularly in that pack. With you think about Tag Byrne, you think about Finlay Bealham, Tag Furlong in that back line as well. James Lowe, Jameson Gibson Park, they're key players. A lot of them are getting older, Dom. How do you reckon we'll see these players play, or how much do you think we'll see these players play in the next couple of years before that World Cup? Do you think they'll wrap them in cotton wool a little bit, or do you think this is sort of right? We're just going to keep going until this hits the fan, basically.
I think if you're Andy Farrell and you're the Irish Rugby Board, I think what you've got to do is player management, 100% by making sure that there's a good crop of young players or players who are on the verge who are still performing well at club level to come and have their chance for Ireland. For a wing position, for a 9, I'm talking James Lowe, Jameson Gibson Park here. They're two really big players that are probably always going to be on the team sheet. I think for players like Tag Furlong, that 3 shirt's been filled as a secondary by Finlay Bealham, and he's proved himself now. And so they've got to do the same in the other positions where they're almost too reliant on the big name players. So I think, yeah, maybe over this series, for the big games, get out the big guns. But at the same time, when you've got a weaker opposition, you need to be giving those players who haven't had as much of a chance in a green jersey to show what they're about.
Yeah, it's certainly something I'd like to see from Andy Farrell, getting players like Craig Casey into that 9 shirt and testing them out. Maybe getting them in there for that Argentina fixture, I think. Not the South Africa one. I think the South Africa one, you want to get your best team out. But I think Argentina, that's a big test, obviously, for the Irish. But I think you want to get players like Craig Casey, maybe even a Jacob Stockdale on the wing there, sort of get some fresh players. Not that these players have been around Ireland for a while, but they're also slightly younger players that you can sort of, I guess, build towards the World Cup with. I think it's just developing that reliance on a wider pool of players than they have in the past is something that I would definitely like to see Andy Farrell do. But it'll be fascinating to watch as always. Can't wait to watch that one. It was such an amazing game all those years ago, and I think it's fantastic that they can bring him back to a place like Chicago, which has such a great Irish heritage, and I'm sure Soldier Field will be packed out, and that'll be an absolutely fascinating watch. So we'll see how it goes. I personally, not sure. I do fancy the Irish for this one. I think New Zealand, I can see why they're favourites. I definitely can, but I think Ireland will just get the job done. I think they'll use the emotion of that sort of 2016 game. Farrell will get them back up for this one, and they'll just about do this. I'm going to go for about 2 points, I reckon. I think it'll be a tight one. It'll be a thriller, I think.
Yeah.
But moving on to what I'm sure you're itching to talk about, is England, Australia. Now, this one at Twickenham, 2 games on in London this weekend. I'm in London, actually, but I'll be unable to see both games. I'm actually going to a theatre show, so yeah, shows how much of a rugby fan I am anyway. But yeah, that first game is Twickenham, obviously, England, Australia. This one's a huge one, Dom, isn't it? After that fixture last season where the Aussies stole it at the death, Borthwick's come out with a team. I will sort of just read off, I guess, the key name inclusions in it. He's gone for Finn Baxter at 1, Jamie George, Joe Hayes, and the front row partners, Maro Toje, Chesham, Guy Pepper in at 6 ahead of Tom Curry, Sam Underhill, Ben Earl, and then he's picked a back line of Alex Mitchell, George Ford, Fraser Dingwall, and Tommy Freeman, who starts at 13. And then he's gone for a big back line in Freddie Stewart, Tom Roebuck, and Emmanuel Feoboso, who's not as tall, but he's certainly as physical and certainly as good in the air. What do you make of this side from Steve Borthwick? I think a lot of people are sort of saying that it's quite similar to the sides that he was going for in the summer against Argentina, and he's trying to develop this sort of kicking game strategy.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, front row wise, he's definitely gone, okay, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing with Baxter, George, and Hayes, who all weren't on the Lions tour. So I can understand that. And then equally in the second row, he's gone for 2 players who were pretty much standouts in the Lions tour. And obviously you can't omit Maro Tojo from this team. Guy Pepper over Tom Curry, I think, is a wise decision because I thought he would have maybe gone for a taller player like an Alex Cole, maybe like a Chandler Cunningham South. But if you're going on form, Guy Pepper is definitely the man to be in this squad. He's played every game for Bath so far this season, alongside Sam Underhill, and the two of them, I think will be really good on that back row. And then we obviously know how good Ben Earl is at 8. George Ford at 10. I will sing his praise and I will claim how good of a 10 he is. However, with him at 10, it's almost like Borthwick's wanting to play, very kick-dominated rugby, not so much fast-paced, creative that probably England fans want to see. But nonetheless, I don't think it's a terrible choice, but when you've only got 2 backs on the bench, it's definitely interesting. Dingwall, I'm very surprised to see starting. I would have expected maybe Lawrence or Ajomo to be there, but I think it's probably that he wants to see Dingwall playing in an England shirt, and then he's partnered him with Tommy Freeman because they play at the same club, and he likes Freeman at 13 as well. We saw it in the Six Nations against Wales, so Yeah, it's definitely an interesting call. And then a back three, Tom Roebuck and Faye Webosa, I don't really have many arguments with, but Freddie Stewart, I'm never keen on an England shirt because I feel like he's got that aerial ability, but then there's not much else that follows from it.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
front row replacements, it's top draw, three Lions there. Alex Coles, I think, is a great cover for the second rows or for six if Sam Underhill or Guy Pepper can't quite manage the full. Obviously, Tom Curry then can come on at 6 or 7 or even 8, and Pollock's the same. But yeah, I'm confused about the 6-2 split on the bench. I think with England, we have players who can play 80 minutes quite easily. Guy Pepper probably, Maro Itoje, proves he can. Ollie Chesney probably could. Ben Earl definitely could. Sam Underhill, maybe not. But when you've got so many players in that, kind of back five in the scrum who can all play 80 minutes, you don't need to, have it swayed so heavily. But I guess it's just Borthwick kind of wanting to give people game time, show what they can do, how much of an impact can they make off the bench, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. But we'll see what kind of game plan he's wanting to execute with this.
Yeah, it's interesting you say about the game plan there, just to finish up on that point. And I think it seems fairly clear to me, I'm not sure what you think, that this is an attempt from Borthwick to counteract the threats that Australia are going to pose. So that big high ball game of Joseph Swally that they're so effective with, and they're a very athletic back three of Jorgensen and many others as well. Corey Toole coming into the mix as well. I think that's why they've gone for such sort of big backfield players. I think that's the reason there. And I think also it's a sense of we're gonna be a little bit more pragmatic. We're not going to give you. We're gonna be smart about this. We're gonna give the ball to George Ford. We're gonna kick into the right areas. We're not gonna kick loosely because I think that was a key thing in the Rugby Championship with Australia, where they were capitalising on opportunities where the play was loose and they were counter attacking and they were scoring a lot of tries. So I think Dom personally, that's what he's sort of gone for. I think he's also building on that Argentina success that he had, and picking players to replicate that game plan. What would you sort of say to that sort of assumption that I'm making? And is there any other sort of factors that you think have come into the mix for him choosing this sort of side?
No, I think you're right. I think you've definitely gone for size in the back line. I think he's gone for kicking and he's gone for size. Take away Alex Mitchell and George Ford from this conversation right now, but you look at your 12, 30, you're having 12, 13, 14, 15. You've got Fraser Dingwall and Tommy Freeman, that's a big centre partnership. And if you look at who else he could have picked, he's got a Jomo who's probably more ball handling rather than a physical presence. Ollie Lawrence, he's a big go forward presence. So I was surprised to see him out of the squad. Obviously Tommy Freeman, very quick, very powerful. Tom Roebuck, very quick, very powerful. They were both all the same. And then Freddie Stewart has that area ability, and to an extent, the whole back three have an aerial presence. But yeah, I think I do agree with what you're saying. I think it's definitely play to how they're going to play, because this England team haven't been, it's the same with Ireland. They haven't been together very long at all. And whereas Australia are coming off the back of a Lions tour, the Rugby Championships, they've been playing together for so long, producing really good results. You can see how they've been, what their game plan is. So I think, like I said, it's definitely manage their game rather than play our own against Australia.
Does that disappoint you with 2 years away from the World Cup? Playing that way, playing to counteract the threat when you've got so much talent yourself?
I think, yeah, maybe a bit more confidence from Borthwick would be better for him to just be like, no, this is the team that we've got. This is how I want us to play. And so go out there and do it. And then we can kind of manage how off the bench with how they might be playing. But I can understand why he's done it. Yes, it's a bit of a cop out, but at the same time, when you've had a team who have been playing together since June, July, you're going to be on the back foot a little bit. So you've got to kind of soak that in before you go forwards, rather than running at them and kind of getting flops back.
And just a word on Australia before we move on to your prediction. Seeing Lennox, Gatau, Tom Hooper and James O'Connor for this one. Rugby Australia not releasing those players or not being able to release those players from their clubs, whether that's a decision that they've made themselves or whatever's worked there. Where do you think do you think this is going to be a big sort of, I guess, a drawback for them? And do you think this really damages their chances?
I think it definitely hinders them a little bit, especially how good Lenny Katau was. I think he's probably the biggest loss out of the three of them. If I was saying that, I'm still not convinced by Tate Edmed at 10. I think he's got a bit of growing to do for his game. But yeah, obviously it's going to knock them on the back foot, but they still got plenty of good quality around the park. In the forwards, they're very strong. Is Will Skelton going to be available? I don't know.
I would imagine
But they've still got.
with yeah, I would think so.
So I think he could be a big disruptor. Obviously, Valentini is still there. Harry Wilson, and then the backs, obviously you've got Jorgensen still, you've got Harry Potter still in that team, Suali. So there's a lot still good in that Australia team, and they should be able to kind of balance how they want to play. Still play the best of their ability despite having a couple of players out. But I think for prediction wise, I'd have to say I think it'll be England by like 5. It won't be a convincing victory at all. We'll definitely be coming away from it with a lot of questions and whatnot. But I think when you combine the fact that England are going for a soaked method rather than a forward playing method, I think they'll just beat them at their own game, and it will just be a pretty dull win.
Yeah, no, I fancy a similar result there. I think if Australia had Lenny Katau and James O'Connor and Tom Hooper, three such huge players for them, honestly. Tom Hooper is an absolute nuisance. Lenny Katau is a superb second distributor. And yeah, I mean, James O'Connor, he's come back and he's been all firing there. So I think that will harm them in this game. They'll have a couple of players to come back in. Hunter Pai Sami, have Jack Gordon. He's coming back in for the autumn at 9. So he could potentially come in and do some good stuff. But yeah, I think that'll harm them. And I expect them to lose by 9 points in this game. But that'll be a very interesting one at Twickenham. But just across the city of London, there is another Autumn Nations Series match, a repeat of the 2015 fixture, which was just in Brighton, south from here. South Africa versus Japan in England for the first time since that Japan upset. And they will play at Wembley Stadium this weekend. Now, I know you sort of touched on this at the start of the episode, where you're saying Japan, they're probably going to get a good hiding from South Africa here. But what do you expect to see from South Africa in this game?
I still expect to see, a lot of players who were playing in the Rugby Championship. I think Rassie has made the mistake before of going too easy on the side and kind of getting bitten in the arse a little bit. But I think he'll still go strong. The players will still know the systems and the structures and everything like that. But we will probably see, I wouldn't be surprised, these fancy little cuts around the laws and the lineouts in the middle of the park and stuff like that. I think it is what he wants to play, but he just couldn't afford to do it against such good oppositions in the Rugby Championship. But no, I still think South Africa will, take them to the cleaners, and it will be admirable performance by Japan. But that's overpowered class. So yeah, it'll be a South Africa victory for sure.
Well, it'll be interesting to see that because I know Japan, they obviously lost by 4 points to Australia last weekend, so they'll be looking to build on what was, a positive result against Australia, really, to get that close to winning that game. It was quite impressive, and it'll be interesting to see what they do this autumn. They'll have a game against Wales coming up in a couple of weeks' time, and that'll be one they'll be targeting and saying, let's get our revenge from that second second match in the series against Wales in the summer. But yeah, that'll be an interesting one. I fully expect South Africa to win that game though, and I think we'll see a bit of experimentation, but a bit of sort of continuity as well from Rassie in this game. When you consider they travel to the Stade de France next week to play France,
Yeah.
so pretty good warm up for that fixture. In all fairness, so very much looking forward to that one as well. And then we'll just touch on Scotland, USA, just to finish. In terms of Scotland, are we expecting them to chop and change and give a few more boys some international game time, or do you expect them to sort of try and build from their strong team, I guess their strongest team, and build towards the New Zealand fixture that they've got, which is their biggest one?
I think, yeah, there'll be definitely a lot of players who should be playing in that New Zealand game, maybe who haven't had as much time playing at club rugby. So you think of all the players who came back from the Lions tour who didn't, get straight into URC rugby or Prem rugby straight away. I think they'll definitely be in the starting lineup. So, Finn Russell, Tru Pelotu, a couple of others in the forwards as well. I think they should be playing. But then also I think there'll be a mixture of players who have kind of been on the fringes. USA, I think it's a game that Scotland should win. They should be looking at this saying, we're not going to be turned over. We need to still play the best of our ability and beat a side who we are better than. And so I think, like you say, there'll be a mixture of Lions who haven't got their season probably going up and running to the full, to full speed, but also players who, haven't had as much of a chance. So yeah, I think Hugh Jones obviously being a big standout of not being present. So do they go to a Pilotu centre doubles? I'm not sure, but it'll be interesting to see how they line up for sure.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see that for sure. I think players like Aaron Reid will hopefully come in for them. I think he's been fantastic for Sale for a number of years, and I think he just misses out because he's got Darcy Graham, he's got Duan van der Merwe in his way for that jersey. But it'll be interesting to see how Scotland build on that on this game at the weekend when you think of those bigger fixtures against Argentina and New Zealand. But that'll move us on to our final two topics of discussion of the episode, and that is the English Prem and the URC roundup. So we had another round of fixtures, of course, this weekend. A lot of great games, as always, in the English Prem. We'll start with Saints against Saris, 43-31. Just a quick word on Tommy Freeman.
Yeah, I mean, second half hat trick, and then a first in the first half is just crazy. But you know why he's one of the best in the world for a reason, and that's exactly why. To do it against the Saracens team who, are high flying this season. Probably more people expected to get a victory out of that game. But yeah, he was just on fire. It's sometimes people say that wingers have the easiest job, but at the same time, you've got to be able to finish off the tries once they get to you. And he definitely did that.
Well, he makes it look easy, doesn't he? He's just absolutely effortless, superb win for Saints. That leaves them top of the table. Exeter Gloucester, Henry Slade on fire yet again. Another couple of tries in this game for him. Emmanuel Fabuso keeps his hot run going. Exeter potential playoff favourites and to make that.
Yeah, I think they're definitely putting their hat in the ring for it. We know that Gloucester aren't on top form this season, but also to nil them in the second half it's impressive. 2 tries as well for the Chiefs. But yeah, Henry Slade, he's just he's keeping them ticking and keeping them going for sure. But they've got so much quality, and now that Ikitau's in that squad and Jenkins is back, and seeing Hooper and Roots and Fisselau in that back row, it's really good. And Fisselau's actually stepped up to the plate now that Ross Vincent was injured early in the season. So yeah, it's nice that it's been seamless transitions for Chiefs.
Absolutely fantastic from them. Again, winning at Sandy Park. Harlequins 52, Newcastle 14. Marcus Smith on fire. Newcastle capitulate again this season. That's another defeat for them. They've lost all their games so far this season. Do you think it was just a classic Quins blitz, or do you think there's something really to be worried about for Newcastle?
Yeah, I think there is serious cause for concern for Newcastle because It's great that they've had all this investment and stuff, but at the same time, they could be in danger of going down because it's still a very real option depending on who wins in the champ. And whatever Ealing or Bedford or the Knights decide to do, and whoever wins that top spot or wins the playoff. So yeah, they are in danger for sure. But it's honestly like watching a bunch of kids play. Like it's very low level rugby. It's very one dimensional. It's just not great, and it's not what you expect from a Prem side. Especially a team like Newcastle as well, who in the past have been so great. But Harlequins, yeah, just I think it was the perfect game for them after being nilled the week before. They just came out and were like, yeah, we're not taking any nonsense. 5 tries in the first half, and you know, nilling Newcastle almost to the death. So yeah, they were lucky, I think, Newcastle to actually get anything out of that game.
It was not great of watching, in all fairness, but Marcus Smith, absolutely superb from him. He's unlucky to miss out on the England 23, in all honesty. Bath Bristol, 40 points to 15. This one ended a lot more handsomely a victory suggested in terms of when you look at the game. Again, Bath just overawing any team or most teams that they play, really, with their sheer quality. What did you make of Bristol's performance in terms of how they kept that fight for so long?
Yeah, I think, like you say, you summed it up really well. That they kept the fight going for so long, but it's just once you start bringing players off who, they haven't by any means got a full strength squad. They are still missing a lot of players. So when you're bringing players on who aren't most experienced at this level, especially against an opposition like Bath, you just expect players who score to score. Cocknessinger, Arundel scoring late on in the game. Underhill as well got that one just before Arundel's breakaway. But I don't think it's not a time that Bristol should be worrying, but I think they'll be glad to see the international break for sure.
Yeah, well, I want to get a lot more players back in, wouldn't they? They've got a lot of really top players out injured at the minute, and they'll be hoping to make a push for promotion still this season, despite that loss. Leicester beating Sale 36 points to 35. Leicester getting the job done yet again at the Welford Roads. Sale, good fight from them, considering, sort of, I guess, the pasting they'd had from Saris the week before. Adam Radwan showing Steve Borthwick perhaps he had made a mistake with leaving him out. What do you make of Radwan's performance in this game?
Yeah, he was really, really good. And I think, having been put in the preliminary training squad and then missing out was definitely a bit confusing. And yeah, he just kind of proved the point. And, it's his celebration right here, right now, kind of look where I am, look, I'm here, kind of put me in the team. So I think, yeah, big mistake leaving him out. But I mean, credit to Sale for coming back into it in the second half. Putting on 28 points is impressive, and obviously George Ford 100% success rate from the tee. So good on him as well, improving why he's in the England squad still. But yeah, it could have gone either way, I think, really, in that second half. But it was just the fact that Leicester were a bit more resolute, kept the discipline, and kept Sale at bay.
It was a very high scoring affair yet again. But that'll round us up on all the Premiership action from the weekend. That is the Premiership sort of on a hiatus now for the autumn internationals. So it'll be a wee while before we have another fixture there. But the URC continues. They had another round of fixtures here. Glasgow getting the better of the Bulls. A great win in this one. Bulls really put it on them, had a try disallowed that would have put them ahead in this game. Then Glasgow came right back and showed sort of real champion qualities there. The Lions getting the better of Ulster in Johannesburg. Ulster unable to make it 2 from 2 in South Africa. Despite scoring 5 tries in this game, they just really sort of capitulated at the end. the Sharks getting their first win of the season against the Scarlets, 29-19. Desperately needed by all accounts from them. Scarlets looking dangerous in that game, but just unable to really deal with the pack of the Sharks, which is usually a problem for most teams, to be fair. Benetton just missing out to Stormers again. That's another game which was sort of, the scoreline was a wee bit handsome in the favour of the Stormers, 31-16. I think Benetton put up a really good fight to get anything from it, but Stormers make it 5 from 5 and they go top of the league. Another win a win after a defeat for Leinster, who bounced back 50 points to 26 against Zebra. Really, it was a bit hairy at points, Dom, in this one. I think they were in 7 points at a stage before halftime. Then Leinster's young guns sort of came out in the second half and really put them to the sword. Another result was Dragons just again unable to get over the line. 19-all against the Ospreys. They had a chance with a conversion to win it and then a penalty to win it, and unfortunately Tina Stabir was unable to convert either of those, so their wait for a win goes on. That's 22 games for them without a win. Munster just getting the better of Connacht again, kicking, just undoing some of these teams, with Stuart Lancaster, I'm sure, tearing his hair out at the 3 missed kicks, which unfortunately cost them a famous win in the end. And then Cardiff, who got the job done with a Joanne Mulder masterclass at the Arms Park in this sort of a tight game, which Cardiff were able to win and make it 4 out of 5. Dom, a lot to digest from the URC this weekend. Anything that sort of stood out to you, and where do you think these teams lie in terms of favourites and perhaps teams that are struggling a wee bit more?
I think Glasgow, like you say, they were a bit fortunate maybe to get as much of that game as they did. I think a lot. You mentioned it. I think it was for the Stormers game. You know, it was a flattering scoreline. Like it quietened down a lot in that second half, but Benetton just they didn't bring anything going forwards in that second half, which is a real shock when you look at who they've got in their backline. You know, you look at Manga at 10 and Maran at 12 with Menoncello, and then Louis Liner on the wing, who I love him as a player. I think he's top quality, and England were unlucky not to claim him at any stage.
Well, I think they're doing all right on wingers, Dom, to be fair. I mean, if
we are doing all
Advance
right.
missing out, then, you know.
Yeah, we're not doing too badly, but no, like you say, Sharks as well. A big win needed from them, and they delivered the goods. So it'll be. I'm hoping. Well, they'll probably all be hoping that they can get back on track. But saying that, it is against a Scarlet side, so how, with it only being a 10-point game, can they walk away proud from that? I don't know. Dragons, they're just a bit of a lost cause, aren't they? I mean, to not even
Well,
win on the
it's funny you say that, because they've had a couple of games and they just keep getting. It's like they don't know how to win a. This is going to sound really harsh. They don't know how to win a rugby match, it would seem, at the minute. They get to the point. They get to the point against the Sharks, the game I went to a couple of weeks ago, and they draw 17 on. They're on the line for 24, 25 phases. They've got Tina Stabir in the pocket with an easy drop goal, and they just don't take that opportunity, and they throw it wide, and they just cough it up. And then in this game, I think it's those 2 kicks from Tina Stabir, and it's just, again, those have to be converted, really. You know, if you're gonna win rugby matches, you need to convert those kicks. And I think they're showing signs that they can play rugby and they can compete in this league, but they just need to win, really. They just need to win. They just need a bit of confidence to say we can win a rugby match and just take it from there, because I think they do have a genuinely decent team. But yeah, when you talk about a win, they're looking a little bit of a lost cause at the minute, for sure. In terms of other teams like Leinster, do you think this is sort of a bit of a nothing game for them when you consider, well, they've got all their internationals out, and sort of Zebra side, which obviously don't travel magnificently well?
Yeah, I think again this one really flattered Leinster, especially as there was that red card as well just at the end of the first half, so that would have definitely impacted going on in the second half. So, and that they stole 2 tries in those 20 minutes. So yeah, it was Zebra. We know that it kind of hit and miss, but yeah, this time they definitely missed, and it would have definitely been closer had they kept hold of 15 players throughout the game. But yeah, I think they're back to winning ways, and it's a confidence booster going into these internationals without all of the Irish squad. That's for sure. And then on to the Cardiff game, like, I mentioned so much last week about home advantage, and it really, really came into play here. But again, a bit of a nothing second half, not really anything going on. And there was the try in the first half, and then the penalty to win it late in the game, end of the game. So it was just a very physical game. Obviously, a wet night in Cardiff, the rain affecting that a little bit, but yeah, just yeah, I wasn't overly enamoured by either team's performance, but it was, Cardiff got it done in the end, so they can walk away quite proud from that.
I think a big thing I took from that game was the Josh Adams try. I think that was him looking back, not back to, I wouldn't say back to his best, but that was sort of vintage Josh Adams, the way he sort of hugged the touchline, he hit the line, it passes it to Johan Mulder, and then he runs the sort of reverse line in support. How important, just touching on him quickly, do you think he could be for Wales this autumn? Do you think he can get back to his best?
Yeah, I think when you're competing with Louis Rees-Zammit, who, yes, he's been injured, and also Rio Dyer, who always seems to turn it on when he puts on a Wales shirt. Also Tom Rogers in there, who's been kind of a bit more of a consistent player when it comes to the Wales squad, because they've not really had many people to turn to. But I think Josh he's always a great person in the dressing room because he's played so much internationally. But whether he can get back into a starting jersey, I don't know. Maybe to begin with, he will do, and then he'll just kind of slowly eke his way out of the Wales squad.
Yeah, well, it's a curious one because I think he was absolutely huge for them a couple of years ago. When you think of their 2019 team, he's running in tries for fun. He made the British and Irish Lions squad in 2021, and it's just been injuries really for him. Nothing really you could say of his own fault. I think he's just plagued with injuries, and it's sort of left, I guess, him and Wales in sort of a spot where he's been, I guess, not being able to get as many international appearances as he would have wanted to, purely by being unavailable. So it'd be nice to see him back. I think he's a classic winger. He's a great finisher, great speed, understands the game very well. So hopefully for Wales' sake that he can come back and potentially put in a couple of tries this autumn for Wales. But that finishes us off on the Ruck and Roll Show this week on our Not Autumn Nation series preview, and obviously going through all things URC and Prem. And we're very much looking forward to all the action this weekend. 2 games in London, 1 in Chicago, 1 at Murrayfield in Edinburgh, and much more URC action with another round of fixtures there. But thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for Dom for again coming on and previewing all that for us. And we shall see you next week where we dissect all those fixtures. See you then. Bye bye.